I think we always do this the exact same way, and we'll just do it. We'll just roll it. Jamie, do you have people in your church that serve in the church?
Yes. How about you?
You know, we absolutely have people who serve in the church, and
Let-
that's what we're going to talk about today. Is people who serve in the church. So that's our topic for the day: serving within the church. Well, this is Two Pastors Talk because we're two pastors who are talking about life within the church. We've spent, I think, this is our seventh or eighth. I was wrong on the last one. I think this actually might be our ninth one. We've talked about lots of different topics, and today probably we've talked about prayer. I mean, that's certainly more practical. Um, this is probably a pretty practical in the weeds one as well. Like, what does it look like to serve in the church? And before we came on here, we had a brief conversation about um, like planning for things that take place in the church. And what I was going to say before we abruptly stopped, and I'll throw this in there, and then we can kind of move on from there. But I think one of the things that we've one of the mindsets that we've really gone through here at Westway at our church, and this was probably a pretty big ministry shift for me was was just trying to think in terms of um who is my like what is my primary role, like what is the primary role of pastors, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this. um I would default to Ephesians 4, so to equip the body to grow in their faith and raise up the church and those kinds of things. And that's really required a shift for me in my thinking of who is my primary constituency, like. And so for us, the thing that we've tried to work through as pastors here at Westway Christian Church is when I'm leading, like, I remember when I was in student ministry, um, for the longest time, I thought my job was to um, like be the primary pastor to my middle school and high school students.
Right.
And it was that. It wasn't not that. But really, over time, what I learned was my primary job was to equip, was to like recruit and raise up people from within our body to do that, and then to pour into them. So my primary constituency changed from the middle school and high school students that we had in our church, and it transitioned to, no, my job is really about um, serving those who serve, and equipping them and empowering them and engage and enabling them to do the work of the church. And that, I mean, that's the Ephesians 4 piece, right? um because we can't, as pastors, we can't do everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I don't know when, I can't point to like one thing that happened in that, other than probably our youth ministry was growing, and I realized, man, no, I actually can't be the primary, um like the primary disciple maker for all of those people.
Yep.
But I can be, maybe, I can be the primary disciple maker of a group of people and equip them to be able to go out and then serve in their ministry capacity. So, just from like a philosophical standpoint, that's kind of how I approach this topic of serving within the church. And that's not always, um, I would say that's not always a popular opinion. Because especially especially in that youth ministry role, I definitely felt like there were people in the church, like my job was to like pastor their children.
Yeah. Mhm.
um and and I mean, certainly that was part of it, but I didn't view my, like, at some point, whenever that switch happened for me, like, I didn't view my role that way.
Yeah.
Um, so then trying to now in my, my lead pastor role here, I'm trying to equip our pastors to do that exact same thing.
Yep.
Um, so what questions, thoughts, like what kind of how when yeah, questions, thoughts from your perspective, like how do you feel about that?
Not so much questions. I mean, I think it's echoed in like in my experience at the Orthodox Church. I mean, there's a priest who talked about the two purposes of a pastor or two jobs he had. I always felt on one hand I was like, "Whew, that's two jobs. I can do that." It was to pray and to teach, like to really to obviously in our services we like from our perspective what we do is we pray and we in our worship, but to like we talked last week about the importance of prayer being central to any person's life, but especially the pastor's life. So to pray
Yeah.
and then to through that communion with the Lord and through obviously learning and worship to teach to impart. So in a sense, it's the same idea of what you're saying to equip, to give people what they need. I like to use the word, and it's often misused these days, but to empower people
Yeah.
to realize they have like a responsibility and that the church. I mean, it's a sad truth. I don't know if it's. I would imagine probably it's similar for you guys, but certainly in Orthodox circles, it's like at best it's 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. It probably always will be like that. You always have those small remnant of small group of people who are willing to do the heavy lifting, but trying to help people, even those who don't really help a lot, see how they can help. And I
Mm.
think to do that, we do that through delegation, and maybe even just saying like it's funny at our church. I was talking about this at one point, and we one of the things we do because it's a small building, it's not that big of a building, is I have encouraged our people just to clean the church. Like
Mm.
it needs it. We eat in our space. We have to do that. We have a fellowship meal every Sunday, but our space is limited. So part of where we worship, we can, which for us, I'm reluctant to do this because I like keeping the sacrosanct nature of the area that we worship in apart from where we fellowship. Not because fellowship's bad, because I just don't want crackers and stuff all on the floor making a mess. So we really can't do that. We have to split up our space to do a little bit of fellowship. So every Sunday, I just finally kind of got a little bit tired of like trying to figure out how to get volunteers. So I voluntold everybody. So I just
Hmm.
voluntold all of our members, like the people who really, because this is still a relatively small group. I divided everybody up into 1 week groups and just said,
Mm.
I told them straightforward. It's like the church needs to be clean. Uh, I've assigned you to groups after we get done with our meal on Sundays. Um, this is what needs to happen. And then I just said straightforwardly, I said, and I know some of you are going to tell me I can't stay or I can't help. And I just said, like I said last week, I said, I don't care. It's okay. Do what you got to do. I'm making a way for you to be able to serve. And I was surprised because it's not been great, but it's not been bad. But also, too, there have been people who, generally speaking, just really don't do anything. But having that sort of possibility put in front of them, they really took the bull by the horns and ran with it. So I think delegation for pastors, like I think your point is absolutely right. Our job, like I'll broaden this a little bit bigger for from the Orthodox perspective. We have a hierarchy of clergy. So at the bottom, you might say, because it's an inverted pyramid, at the bottom is the bishop. All right.
Mm.
Then above him, he's holding up the priests. Priests then have there's deacons who are ordained clergy, and then the deacons above them are the essentially the people. Everybody else, the laos, the people. So instead of it being top down, it's bottom up, and this the bishop's there to support us all. But the bishop, while everybody really loves the bishop, Archbishop Alexander, he's a monastic kind of guy. He's um, kind of exotic, because it's an Orthodox bishop. They wear the clothes, the clothes and everything, and it looks so different. He's just one guy, and he can only do so much. So he designates, a lot of his duties. He passes them on to the priests and says, "You are my hands in the parish, and your job then is to do a similar thing with your people." So the deacon
Yeah.
assists me, and then the people. you empower them to do the work. It sounds like I really know what I'm talking about, but in our parish, it's still like, I mean, I wouldn't mind my parishioners hearing this. We're still struggling with sort of organizing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but service is definitely, I think empowering people to serve, um, discipleship through worship and through teaching is critical, and getting people to realize like the church building is theirs, the
Yeah.
life of the church body is
Mm.
theirs, the gathering, as you would put it too, that's all of ours shared. And if you leave it up to the priest or the pastor, um, either either you're going to feed his ego, or make him more psychotic, in the sense that he's like a clean freak and does everything himself, or or you can really make the parish or the church grow, through service. I mean, it's critical.
Yeah. I like the way, I like the way you talked about that of having, and I'll say having because you like assigned it to them. So kudos on that. Um, I think having them to take responsibility for that, because that's really that's really a bit of culture creation. Because what's going to happen is when someone cleans after someone else, you're wanting that switch to go in their head of, oh, so the next time, like when it's not my week to serve, instead of, um because we've laughed about this before,
Yeah,
instead of, for us, instead of me leaving my little communion cup
yep,
in the chair for someone else to clean up,
yeah, yep,
like I'm going to realize that 3 weeks from now I'm doing that.
yeah,
So when I'm cleaning the space and I see that communion cup, like maybe I will be a little less, why do these people leave their communion cups here? And then when it's my turn to throw my, like, I'm gonna throw that away on my own,
yep,
and I'm gonna take some personal responsibility. And that's, that I think that's a really important aspect of creating that culture of service within the church, so that it is what I wrote down while you were talking was like, we're helping people take ownership of what happens
yep,
within the body and helping them
absolutely,
see that.
yep,
And that just takes a long time
yeah,
for people to get that. Um, and helping them see that, no, this is your church,
yeah,
um, in a lot of ways. And I've played with that phrase a lot, because there are certain things that we talk about every year, and serving is one of those things. And I think last year, part of that part of that it might have been in Romans, actually. I don't remember when it was, but I think one of my sermon titles was, "This is not your church." And what I meant by that is like, whatever whatever preferences and opinions you have about what happens here, like, that's great. You're allowed to have them. And in one sense, don't come to me and try and bind me with your preference and your opinion, because it's not like, this is Christ. Ultimately, it's Christ's church.
yep, yep,
Um, and yet, each one of us is a part of the church. We make up Christ's church.
yeah,
So in some ways, it is your church,
yeah,
but just not in the way that you might interpret. If I say this is your church, there are a whole host of ways that you might interpret that. And and one of them is, hey, I need to take care of this place. Like,
yeah.
this place is mine to do.
But you think about it in terms of stewardship, especially like the
Mm.
parable of the talents. I think we had that was one of our Sunday readings recently, and just that we're given what we're
Mm.
given to care for it, because we didn't have it when we were born, and we're not going to keep it when we die. So the church itself, while, like you say, like we are a part of the body of Christ, the physical building and space of worship is just sort of it's a microcosm of that. Like, what are we going to do with it? Like, I often tell people, like, I think I might have mentioned this when we're talking about kind of our paths. Like one of the most profound things for me was, when I was still going to the evangelical church I was a part of before I became Orthodox, and kind of learning. One of the things I learned was like by mopping the floor there, like how important it was that there was somebody to come and clean, clean the building. That was like it's always been an issue, and not because I'm a clean freak, but because like it just needs to be clean. This is where we worship. And it's one of the sad realities is that as we become more strange how we as societies we become more materialist and become in essence even as Christians so many Christians have become more gnostic, denying the physical,
Mm.
we would say the sacramental nature of the world. um, Things like cleaning the church are just they're just not that it's wrong to hire somebody to clean it, it's just something to be done. Whereas service, even the more mundane things are, well, maybe especially those are great points of contact for us with just learning to, I don't know, be human beings and
Yeah.
to humble ourselves. So there's always, one of the things I was reading something before we got on because I was looking up like service from an Orthodox perspective, and one of the guy named Father Sergei Glagolev, a priest who died a while back, and just a good Orthodox priest, he talks about it in terms of like the priests or the pastors are often like the quarterbacks, but you've got to have the offensive line. I know this is sports talk. This is way over my head, but I get it.
I love it.
I don't watch sports ball a whole lot, but without the offensive line, without the other players, the quarterback, everybody's watching the quarterback.
Yeah.
Priest, pastor. But if no one else is manning that line, if those people that are in that line aren't doing their job, if they're just standing there, if they're looking the wrong direction, walk off the field, there's no way for the quarterback to do what he's doing. Now, you can see a quarterback who will run the ball and make a touchdown, but is he going to do that every time? I mean, I
Hmm.
guess there's some that try to do that, but it's not realistic. You need everyone has a part to play, and so service is critical. I think to us, as pastors, like the people to encourage us for one thing, probably to keep us humble, but also to make us better at doing the things like you said, like equipping the people. As I said, giving me time to pray and time to teach.
Yeah.
I love I love working in our church building. I'm happy to go clean it. For me, that's mowing the lawn at the church is great. I don't have to answer my phone. I can just mow the lawn. Nobody's troubles. They're far away because I'm on the mower. I can't answer the phone. That's not ultimately. It's not very good, is it? Because that's really not. Well, I'm happy to do it. It's really not like if to pray and to teach. I mean, I guess I can pray while on the mower, but I'm not really because I'm doing that. I'm not necessarily engaged in the thing I'm really supposed to be engaged in.
Yeah. And I think that's this is one of those topics like this has kind of been a little bit of a recurring theme of um, people. Some people are going to hear and interpret that as, oh, so what? I know I called you Jamie earlier. So I like anyway. I call because that's like
It's
that's
understood.
just that's who you are. So I think like some people might hear that as so Father James is too good to mow the grass.
Yeah,
And and I just say that because I've just been around a lot of church people,
yeah,
you know, and and I think trying to I think I think one of the things that I love about what's happening here on Wednesday nights is um, we have a midweek program that reaches all ages, and every single one of our pastors is here serving in some capacity. Every single one of our elders are here serving in some capacity, and we have a new group of kind of like quad of leaders, elder apprentices. Every single one of our elder apprentices are here serving. So this was something we discussed on Monday. Like our like hierarchical leadership people, like they're not just sitting back and watching the work happen, but they're actually
yep,
engaged in the work.
yep.
So I think that's a really critical thing. But at
I
the
agree.
same time, our job is like again, like hear this cautiously. Whoever church people are going to be watching this,
Yep.
our job is not necessarily to do that work. And that's not just something that I've made up, or Jamie, you're making up. Like, that's actually what Ephesians 4 says.
Well, Acts,
Um,
even in Acts, you
their
hear the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, their job is to equip people for the work, and that is, that's a real, that is a, and that, I used that word culture earlier. That is a real big culture piece to try and understand. And I think the closest I've ever come to assigning the work that you're saying it. The way I usually frame it up when we talk about serving is, hey, if you're in the bathroom before or after the 10:15 and you see like there's water on the counter, and your first thought is, someone should clean that up. I said, your next thought had better be, oh, yeah, that's my job,
Yes,
and go
exactly.
get a paper towel. Now, and then what I always say is, now, if the toilet is overflowing,
Yeah.
that's probably someone else's job.
Yeah.
Um,
Go find them.
but, but how can we encourage our bodies to, really take ownership of what's happening here in a way that they're involved and invested in? And one of the things that for us um, has been kind of an ongoing thing here is in 2003, 2004, long before I ever came to Westway. You've been here. We the big auditorium that we have, like, we
Yep.
built that big addition, was put on. And one of the things that's kind of happened in the 20 years since is, um, we haven't necessarily kept up on all of the maintenance that's been needed to take place. So we're starting to get in the place now where, hey, the building has been here for 20 years. We're actually going to pay the mortgage off this year,
Hey.
which we're really pumped up and excited about. We can't wait for that. But the reality of it is, one of the reasons why we're be able to pay the mortgage off early is because some of the deferred maintenance pieces haven't been done.
Yep.
So, um, how do we make sure that we're taken care of? And I like the way you framed it up as stewardship. Like, how are we being stewards? And that comes through people in the body serving.
Yep.
And for us, creating opportunities for people to serve. Um, but also, one of the things that one of the things that we've learned is, through serving, relationships are built.
Yeah. Hmm.
So how can we, and not just like, I mean, it's not just a marketing issue, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how can we communicate? No, serving isn't just doing something in the building, but when I serve with other people, I'm actually going to grow my relationship with other people. And then we've also been talking about, how can we help serving to be an aspect of discipleship,
Right.
um, and helping people learn and grow in that. And I think we're really on the front end of trying to figure that piece out.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I mean, serving is such a crucial thing for us, and helping people know um, why they should do it, and taking care of what. Yeah, I just like the way you talked about that from a stewardship standpoint.
Well, it seems pretty critical. And it's a couple thoughts I had too. Like, I'm always kind of surprised that people want to serve. I guess sometimes
Mm,
it just seems like we have to ask a lot to get people to do things. But actually, the truth is, I think people do want to do more stuff. Sometimes it's not the thing that they want to do that
mm,
you're asking them to do, like cleaning the
mm.
church. I'm just trying to put that on everybody and just share the load. It's simple. It doesn't take much time. Um, but I've been amazed when maybe it's because some of the things I have to ask people to do are not so much fun. But like some stuff, I'm kind of amazed. Like people jump up and like, yeah, I'm glad to do that. So like giving people, not taking for granted the fact that people want to serve, even if it doesn't look like it.
Mhm.
Maybe they're not right for the thing they want to do, so you have to find a place for them. But the other thing I was thinking was something else too. Oh, I know what it was. So in the Orthodox Church, when you come to the Orthodox Church, you're new to it, you're not Orthodox yet, you have never been a part of it. You come in and you see it and you like it. And you say, I want to do this. I think we mentioned this before. There's a stages. We don't just bring everybody in right away. They need time. They need a process. The Lord's good. He'll take care of them. We're going to take the time to make sure that they get the best foundation before we say, take them to communion, which for us is the standard. Like you can't
Right.
receive communion if you're not Orthodox, and it takes time to become that. It's not a bunch of learning; it's a bunch of doing, coming
Mhm.
in and doing, and you learn stuff too, and you're going to keep learning stuff your whole life. But one of the things, one of my friends, a guy named Father John Parker, who was the priest in Charleston near us. I wish I did this more, but he would always with the new catechumens. So a catechumen is someone who's inquired at your church long enough. They like, I want to become Orthodox, and you say, all right, we're gonna have a little betrothal here. We're gonna sort of get into an engagement to see how this works for you. If you want to stick around and keep doing this, we'll go forward. While they're catechumens, one of the first thing he would do is say, well, the first thing to learn is to serve in church. So he'd always give them like some little duty in the church, little
Yeah,
dinky thing. Pick up
yeah,
the bulletins if you've got a bulletin. Pick up the Lestray bulletins if you're still doing that, or make sure the nave of the church, which is synonymous with the sanctuary of the evangelical church, is clean and orderly, or vacuum this rug. Nothing complicated, but it was a point of serving. And some people balk at that. Like you should like, but I've watched when I don't do that, that
yeah.
the people who come in, they don't know what to do, and they don't have a sense of ownership. So like
Hmm.
you probably do something similar. I mean, with new people, like trying to help them see like part of being here, like what the one thing when people become Orthodox is all like they want to learn all the stuff, and that's kind of glamorous, and they want to, they want to do all the orthodoxy things, like candles and stuff. That's great, that's good, but probably the better lesson is washing dishes after our common meal on a Sunday. Serve other people, mop the
Yeah,
floor.
yeah, yeah. We have we when we were in Minnesota, kind of our midweek thing too. Um, we served a meal. We prepped a meal, prepped and served a meal for everybody. And one of the things that we found was, the place where we lived in Minnesota had a lot of people from East Africa, and they didn't like immigrants from East Africa, and they didn't always like the food that we made, because we made like like Midwestern Minnesota normal fare, and
Casseroles.
like, yeah, casserole. And they were
Hot
like, they didn't
dish.
want casserole,
Yeah.
hot dish, yeah, exactly. And so one of the things we kind of came up with was jelly sandwiches. So we put bread out and jelly, and then a knife. And what we found was, and like this should not have been rocket science, when you give a bunch of when you set out bread and a jar of jelly and a knife, and you expect 6 to 12-year-olds to do that, that place is going to be a total flipping disaster by the time it's done. So we like need someone to make jelly sandwiches for kids, and we found we found like the perfect person for that. And what was really cool is, this person who was doing it got the nickname over time Jelly Man. And every Wednesday when Jelly Man would roll into Worthington Christian Church, he would say, "Hey, I was at Walmart this week, and I saw kids who come on Wednesday night, and they're like, 'Hey, it's the Jelly Man.'" And like, kind of like you said, balking at, there are some people that if I asked them to be the Jelly Man, like they would, like that would be the most offensive thing in the entire world, because what they really want to do is some other thing. And kind of like one of my favorite things about our what we're doing on Wednesday nights is, as we as our programming piece was growing, especially in children's ministry. um, I think all of the people who were serving in our children's ministry at this point were female, and that's great. Like, I'm not, like, I love
Yeah.
the fact that, love it.
Sure.
But we started like, okay, so are there ways that we can get, are there ways that we can include some males in that piece? And what if we just ask some males from our body to not take over the teaching piece, but just to be a male presence in the room?
Right.
And it's crazy. Like, we have, um, one of the guys that does that is I think he's the head surgeon at our local hospital.
Yep.
Um, We have another guy who has done it in the past. He had knee surgery, so he's recuperating. He was a guy who was a professor at our local Bible college who had spent years and years and years and years in Papua New Guinea. Like he's the dude that comes to church with the Greek New Testament, right? um, and then we have a guy in our body who just a regular works at Target, like just like a regular guy. And there's no hierarchy among those three, but like we have we have people that some people might say, well, surely their gifts and talents and skills could be better used by doing this more, this more attention grabbing thing.
Yeah.
And man, no, you know what? They just want to be there and they just want to serve.
Right.
And sometimes we just need people to make jelly sandwiches.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yep.
and again, like because I've been around church people for a lot of my life, like I know there are some people I would never ask to do that
Yeah.
because their maturity level is such that it will not allow them to be in a place of actual service and submission.
Yep.
And so we've just had to really just navigate through that as well, like um creating, finding opportunities for people to serve and inviting them to do it. And it it certainly isn't as um slow or deliberate or as intentional um or as organized as anything that you do, but it does, there is a little bit of a flow to it
Sure.
because for people who, if serving is going to be about building relationships and it's going to be about discipleship,
Mhm.
um we kind of need to know who's going to be in those slots.
Yep.
We need to know a little bit about their heart
Yep.
in those things. And if someone's not willing to make jelly sandwiches, I'm not sure that I'm ready to say, okay, why don't you lead a small group?
And one of the sayings too, I mean, one of the things we were told in seminary, which I didn't have an issue with clearly because I talk about this, was there are priests who are they're not willing to pick up the mop to mop the floor,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of got to lead from the front. If you want people to do that, I mean, I think that's the bottom line. Especially if you start on a small church, the pastor's going to have to do a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But you also want to, in some ways, I mean, I say this in the best possible way. You want to do the work and be glad to do the work without having ulterior motives, but you also kind of want to, if necessary, provide a little healthy shame to say, maybe the priest or the pastor who has much more things to do, don't let him do these other things. Let him force him to do, like I said, like to do the things he's supposed to be doing instead of having an out to go mow the lawn of the church, because nobody else will do it or they won't spring for a, you know, we have a landscaper actually. So I don't get to
Yeah.
do that anymore. I like mowing the lawn. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it, but it's like nothing should be beneath the pastor to do. He should be willing to unclog the toilets. But it should be the people saying, no, you should be out there doing this. Let us do that. I'm
Yeah.
like I said, I'm all for like I'm an introvert, strangely enough, and I'm Sundays are tough for me because we get done with church and everybody wants to talk, and like by the end, my brain just going.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm happy to go and find a place to hide, and I kind of tell my folks, don't let me do it. You guys
Mm-hmm.
do the work and force me to do the thing I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And this kind of conversation really is like a it really is a higher order of like spiritual maturity that's required to be able to hear this
Yeah,
and engage in it and not just hear, oh, well, James and James and John don't want to do any work. Um, well, I mean, we do,
we
and
do.
this like, one of the things I really appreciated and I'm looking because I wanted to make sure I got my count right. So this is actually episode 9.
Good job.
One of the things that you have consistently brought to the forefront in this conversation that I've just really appreciated so much is we're a part of the body too, as much as
Oh yeah.
like whatever wherever we are and on on the org chart. Um, this is like I am still like when I say, and I haven't said this in a while, but when I say like we are Westway, what I don't mean is all of you people are Westway. I mean no, like I actually and you actually have a role in our church as well that's not limited to that pastoral function. And that's really something I've appreciated you saying. And it's been something kind of on my mind. Like, you know, how often do I see myself as actually a part of the body?
Right.
And it's not that that's a new concept for me, but I've appreciated the way that you've consistently brought that up because it's been a good reminder. Like, no, like I'm a part of this too. Like I'm invested in this too, and I have skin in the game that's beyond what my pastoral role is, which then causes me to question. Okay, well then how am I? Like then I like if I want our body to serve, then I need to be wrestling with. Okay, well if I want our body to serve and I'm a part of the body, then um, that might mean I'm going to run a lawnmower or a
Yeah.
mop or a thing. So that's been something that's been really healthy for me to kind of wrestle through as we've been talking about all of the different topics that we've been covering. So I just really appreciated that.
It's funny. I mean, it's weird. Like in Orthodoxy, of course, I'm wearing a cassock. I got my cross on. All these clerical emblems of which could be a power differential, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be, and it's actually more of a. Let me clear. It's supposed to be a uniform, but on Sundays,
Mm,
I wear vestments. It's priestly vestments, emulating what you see in the Old Testament. It's a long tradition of this in Judaism and then into Christianity. Um, and I stand in the Orthodox Church. You've got the nave where everyone stands together, and then there's a wall which can be interpreted wrongly as a
mm,
divider to keep people out. In one sense, it is, but it's not to keep people out; it's to let people in. And and I stand at an altar, and I face the important thing. Really, is I'm facing. This is different, obviously, than what you see in evangelical circles, or if I'm teaching, this is different. So if I give the sermon, it's just like you. I'm facing the people, but during the service, we all face the same direction together. And you could look at it and go, well, look, he's dressed up this way or whatever. It's all supposed to diminish the role of the priest. Like he's supposed to disappear personally into this beauty, but then also to reappear at moments like the very end of the Divine Liturgy on Sunday mornings or whenever we do the Divine Liturgy, which could be on any number of days. The very end, there's a prayer that the priest reads. He comes out of the altar area, stands in the middle of the people that are all gathered and faces with them forward and reads this prayer, thanking God for what we've just done, thanking Him for His offering, attesting to St. James' proclamation that all good things come from the Father. And it's this moment where the priest, having finished his duty up at the altar, moves back and stands with the people from whom he's been taken out of to do a job, and then prays with them. So it's always this. I think the danger to priests in my ilk is clericalism, the sense of somehow you're separate.
mm,
You are. I mean, we would say in some sense to be ordained is to be taken out and made something different, but at the same time, we're all sinners. We all got to confess our sins. We all got to admit that we're all dealing with the same issues together. We're all priests according to the Scripture. It's a priesthood of believers. Just that some of us, in our perspective, are made a priest with a capital P to go do a job. That's the whole point of being a priest. Everybody's priests. We're all here to offer up creation to
mm,
God and ask Him to bless it, and by doing so, working out a salvation in the midst of the earth. Scripture would
mm,
say. So all of that is just to say, like, there can be misconceptions among the people as to what the pastor's supposed to be doing. There can be misconceptions on the pastor's side of what he is or what he's supposed to be doing. But if we're focused on, I mean, honestly, in some senses, if the priest's whole trajectory at the Divine Liturgy on a Sunday morning is that prayer, like to go through everything to get to the point where he
mm,
leaves the altar, having done all the things he's supposed to do on behalf of the people and for himself in Christ, and then prays that prayer with the people, that's like the trajectory. It returns you to the people. So I don't know if that makes any sense at all. It's just service, and in one sense, it starts with us. But like again, if we're not, if we're giving people, we're not giving them stuff to do. Like you said, I think
mm,
the point you made that was so good in relation to all that is I think people need to see us as pastors with them. Like, I'm with you,
Mm,
but
yeah.
yes, there's a difference, you know. But more than that, too, point you made, I lost my train of thought there when I distracted myself for a second. The point you made was, oh, it was such a good point. You've made it two or three times now. Oh, I lost it. That's so sad because it was like I was ready to just praise your point to the hilt. Oh, it'll come back to me. It will come back to me.
Okay.
But it had everything to do, obviously, with service, with empowering people. I can't remember. It'll come back to me. I must not have been very important.
Must not have been very important, or you would have forgotten it.
Steve Martin,
So that
to the
was.
rescue.
So if you don't know that reference,
Yes.
was a
Let's get
Steve
small.
Martin "Let's Get Small"
Get small.
reference. Back in the day, we we
Boom.
listened to this comedy album by Steve Martin called "Let's Get Small," and that was one of the punchlines.
Yes.
That was one of the
Something very
punchlines.
important.
Oh yes, I have this atomic bomb in my pocket. I think that was the next
Yeah, something like
line.
that.
Um, yeah, I think um, I think so. So this is nine. I say we do one more for this season. Take a little break. Um,
Sure.
like I would be one of the things you kind of touched on was um, I had a conversation with another pastor a couple weeks ago about he is a person who's brand new at the church that he's now at, and he's doing something with their church body. um and one of the things that he's taking time to talk about is what hat the pastor is wearing. And and one of the things he's walking them through is, hey, when when I'm dropping off or picking up my kid on Sunday night from youth group, um, he's like, I'm not really wearing my pastor hat. I'm wearing my dad hat.
Yeah.
So if someone comes up to talk to me when I'm picking up my kid at youth group, he said he's going to be really intentional about, okay, what hat are you wanting me to put on right now? Because right now I'm just kind of picking up my kid, and that doesn't mean I don't want to have some conversation.
Boundaries.
Yes.
Boundaries.
So I think so. I'm gonna press pause. I'm gonna say um, episode 10, something about maybe what is a pastor.
Mm.
Um, so what hat is my pastor wearing?
I actually like that a lot.
I do too. Yeah, what hat is my pastor wearing now? That kind of thing. So then serving. I mean, it really sounds like, I know for us the biggest things that we have found a lot of success in is creating a wide variety of opportunities for people to serve, where you don't have to. Um, I don't want to say you don't have to commit, because that is not what we're going for in any way, shape, or form. But like, what are some easy entry points to people being able to serve and be involved and engaged in the church,
Right.
and consistently communicating them. We don't, you brought up that the 20-80 rule. 20% of the people do 80% of the work.
Yeah.
We're probably, well, honestly, like, as if I were to objectively look and step back and see what's going on in our body, we're probably more in the, I would say, the 55 to 60% of our people are really involved and really engaged, and that might be shorting them a little bit, honestly.
Good.
Um, but one of the things we do see is, in a lot of places, it's the same group of people who are serving in multiple areas.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so we're trying to shake that up a little bit. Of, hey, if you're someone who is, if you're a team leader, you got, I don't know, you guys might call them deacons. Um, we call them team leaders. here. Like, so if you're a team leader and you need help with something, stop kind of, and I said this to them a couple weeks ago, stop going to the 55 or 60% of people who are like that becomes a shame on us.
Yeah.
Stop going to that same group of people and go at people who aren't serving,
Yeah.
who are on that periphery, and ask them. And for us, some of our biggest things have been because of our Wednesday night program that we've had here. We've asked people, hey, can you bake a dozen cookies for Wednesday night? Um, as a way to like get people into that routine of serving and doing something in a way that it's a legitimate serve, it meets a need, and it's a way to um, kind of in a non-threatening way get people to participate in what's going on.
Which
That
reminds me
that's
of
how we've seen it.
which reminds me of what I was thinking that you had said, particularly about you were saying service helps to bring people together too.
Yeah.
Like that's something it's funny when we do um we have one event a year that we do publicly, one big one. We used to do several, but it was just we weren't finding enough people to do the heavy lifting. And this event is like we serve food at a downtown event. Pierogies.
Mm.
Pierogies are such a like a Eastern European thing. So like got a lot of people in our church who love them. We do it at Christmas time. There's a downtown. They closed down downtown. I put pictures on Facebook. Some of you would have seen them. Other people have seen them.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's a thing that when we do it, it brings all these people together, and people kind of at first are a little bit like, "Man, it's going to take 4 hours to do this," and then they hang out and they talk and they eat lunch together, and I think that's super important. I think these opportunities for service on two levels, like you said, if you're getting and to be fair, probably our church is better than 2080. It might be better than that, but it feels like 2080 a lot because
Yeah.
it's the same people doing a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. But it's a small group. But I'm like I said, I'm always amazed that when we kind of go to that periphery, that there are a number of people who want something, something that they can do, but they don't express that, or they don't know. They don't
Mm.
know that they could. In our church, we have male altar servers, and it's not like you just have to be an Orthodox Christian to do it. So
Mm.
again, like most things, there's requirements, but like that's a lot of people who don't ever do that, men who could do that, and they probably assume many times, oh, that's just for so and so.
Right.
No, it can be for any number of people. We can put people on a schedule, or people singing in our choir, or people helping out with the church school program, or there's less glamorous ones like cleaning, which I just force
Right.
everybody to share that fun together.
Right.
Um, but I mean, to my discredit, there are things I think, well, I'll just do this because it's just easier if I just do it.
Yeah.
But it denies somebody the chance, number one, to get together with me when I'm doing a
Right.
thing, but also to get together and do something with somebody else, and to do these sorts of things is good for our souls on top of it all. But that's very
Yeah.
which brings another question up if we still have time for a question or a thought.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So the question I had earlier in my head, and I've pondered this, and I think I have an answer, at least the Orthodox answer in one sense. But is a church? It's almost a rhetorical question. Is a church a voluntary society?
Mm.
In the sense that I asked that because I can't think of who it was. A priest had made a contention to say it's not a voluntary society. You really
Mm.
you when you become a Christian, to be a Christian in part means to serve. So
Mm-hmm.
then when we come to church, it's not just like, I'll pick and choose if I want to serve or not. It's more of a question of saying, how am I going to serve? No one's going to force you to do anything. No one's going to say, you've got to go. I mean, unless I guess maybe you're a Jehovah's Witness or something, they'll force you. I guess. I don't know. Never was one. But, in our church, no one's going to force you, but there's an expectation that, this isn't
Yeah.
strictly speaking, I'll do what I want when I want to do it. It's more like we need your help. Are you capable of this? Is there time? So I think it's a good question. I mean, I don't know how you would approach that if the church is a voluntary society or not one, but it's also the implication. What is the implication of that if that it is or isn't the case?
Yeah. I was looking because I talked a little bit about that last year, and I can't remember what message it was. Um, I mean, at some level it is like, yeah, it's a voluntary affiliation.
Yeah, no one's paying you.
Yeah, you people are people are free to be here or not be here. And at the same time, if you are, I would argue, if you are like, if you're going to call this place, if you're going to call Westway Christian Church your home church, um, that comes with certain a certain set of responsibilities. Like when we several years ago, when I first several years ago, we kind of reworked our whole membership piece.
Right.
And I mean, I didn't make this next phrase up, but it was like, membership doesn't have any privileges. Like by being a member at Westway Christian Church, like there's no special parking spot. You don't
Yeah.
get a badge.
Yeah.
That's not what membership looks like. Membership,
Yeah.
in fact, comes with a set of responsibilities, and it is a voluntary affiliation. Like,
Yeah.
um, people are free. People are free to come and go, and um, we talk these like service is one of those things that we consistently talk about here. And I would imagine that for some people they're sick of hearing it, and who aren't serving. And my guess is they'll probably leave at some point because they don't want to hear us talk about it all the time. Oh, I remember when it was. It was in First Thessalonians, when we were going through First Thessalonians. Like the it was in First Thessalonians, and I think we also talked about it in something else where First Thessalonians talks about if they don't work, they don't eat.
Yeah.
Um, and now, like, it's slowly but surely coming back to me. The second one was like, um, and maybe that was where maybe that was the full text of it, but like, um, I I want to cautiously word this, so I want to think this through for a second. Um, I think believe that we are called to be involved and engaged in what happens in the church. And for people who aren't involved and engaged in what happens in the church, um, whether that's in gathering or serving, um, I mean, it really comes down to like, who are we ultimately responsible for as as pastors? Like, who am I going to be held accountable to
Right.
within the body? Um, And I really want to be held accountable to the people who are involved and engaged, and the people who aren't involved and engaged. I'm not sure what that relationship looks like.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
and I think I think what the way I talked about it was, and it may have been from the first part of our First Corinthians series last year, like, hey, if you're someone who's not involved and engaged here in the ministry of the church, I'm glad you're here. I want you to be here. We're going to proclaim the gospel to you. And I'm just not interested in catering to you.
Yeah.
Um, and in that sense, the church is very much a voluntary affiliation.
Absolutely.
Like, if that's going to be something that is going to be offensive to you, that we're not going to cater to people who aren't really involved and engaged. Like, there are other churches in town. And I don't mean that flippantly, like,
Sure. It's
or
serious.
anything like that. But what I do mean is, yeah, I mean, you're people. This is a voluntary thing. If you don't like what's happening in the way that whatever your, what for you, like whatever your manifestation of how St. James Orthodox Church ministers and serves and proclaims the gospel in Beaufort, my guess is there's probably at least another option that people can go to.
Yeah.
That might, in terms of the way they manifest ministry, might do it that's more in line with someone else's particular thinking about ministry. So in that sense, it's very much voluntary. But what's not voluntary is, hey, if you're a Christian, you're a part of a church. Like, we kind of have an expectation that you're going to serve,
Yeah.
and we get that from like what the Bible says. I don't just get up there and talk about serving two weekends a month because
Yeah.
it's my my favorite thing in the world to talk about. We actually get that from scripture.
Yeah.
Um, so helping people, I think helping people see that piece is something that's really important. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, it made me think, maybe there's that point. I think about us in our formal bringing people into the church, a formalized version of the choir to catechumen to being received, but also too probably with people, like you said, there are people who just they're there, um, they tend to receive, but they don't
Yeah.
necessarily give. And it's funny how people will complain. They'll complain, you have your favorites like a pastor. I'm kind of like, well, in one sense, so did Christ. It was the people
Yeah.
who were there.
Yeah.
And it's like I can't, especially for people understanding this, like the ones who, in one sense, if you want the pastor's attention, be at church. That's really what it comes down to. But there's that transition. I think it was like I was writing this as you were saying this, that the movement from volunteer to servant. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
that, both of those have a function, and maybe it's just a point where a person just simply is willing to play a role in the church. Like, you ask them to do something, they do it. But there's that point where maybe a smaller percentage of those people then transition into truly saying, this is most important. I'm going to be a Sunday school teacher, or I'd like to serve with this women's ministry specifically, and I'll commit to being there every Wednesday. Or, there's that movement. So maybe that's the distinguishing factor. Like it's a society. The church is the body of Christ, in which some people maybe function as strictly volunteers, but then some transition from that into a deeper level of that, which becomes servanthood, you might say.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the way you said when you were talking about favorites for a second. You, I don't, and I'm working on a sermon message for in a few months. We talked about something like yesterday, a little bit about it. Like, I don't think it's favorites. I just like the way you said it. Like, no, the reason that I know them and they know me is because we serve together. Like, because every Wednesday night, I, Pastor John, is here in the building. And part of that is going into the kitchen where our food team is working, and going in there and eating potato chips, because we don't eat potato chips at our house because I'm not mature enough to have a bag of potato chips in our house. But I eat potato chips in the kitchen, and then we like laugh and joke about that, and we build a relationship. So it's not that they're my favorites, it's just they just happen to be the people
Yeah,
that I'm around.
yeah,
And the reason that I'm around them is because they're here and I'm here at the exact same time. And it's maybe that it's kind of I like the way we're talking about this right now. Like it's just kind of this default switch that because we just happen to inhabit the same space together, like something actually happens because of that. Like we get to know one another. And when we're not inhabiting that same space, like how how could we possibly develop a relationship? Like
yeah,
it's not going to happen.
yeah.
And well, maybe maybe I should be more available to people and this and this and this. And I'm like, well, you know what? I am. I'm here every Wednesday night.
You're there. They know where
And
to find you.
yeah, I mean, it really is. Just that presence piece, I think, is so key. And that that favorite thing, I don't know that it's favorite. I think it's just no. We
In
just
as
happen
much
to
as,
find ourselves in the same building on Wednesday nights.
yeah, in as much as like the idea of favorites excludes people, definitely is not the
Mm,
right word. If they're favorite, they're favored because they're just
mm,
because they're there, you know?
mm,
I mean, I I can't. There's a mystical term called bilocation that some people supposedly, they think of Philip and Caesarea, and he's meets the Ethiopian eunuch, and the next thing you know, he's somewhere else. Um, I don't have that gift. I don't know anybody who does, but we can only be in one place, and being at church is the thing that you and I do. And if people really want to know us, that's where we're going to be. I mean, it's funny.
Yeah.
I do think I think there's just this when people have complaints about that, then it's just like you know where to find me, and this is the place to find me. And the ones that the people we tend to get to know. It's funny because at church I realize this too. It's the ones that kind of hover close that want to because I'm busy working. If you want to stay close, you have to work with me. And so the ones that will come and put in the time to clean or to work or to chop wood for our our cookouts and stuff like that. The ones who will come and help clean the church, the ones who help set up our services, like those are the ones who I'm going to spend the most time with. And if that's important,
Yeah.
um, you have to be there.
And that, yeah, and it's, I like that so much. Like, it's not an exclusionary thing.
It
Just,
can be everybody. You know,
yeah,
it's hard. I mean, it's harder the bigger the church gets, the
yeah,
harder it is for us. But still, but boy, it's it's so funny when I see. It's sad, and I admit this. Like when people, I get used to people not being at church, they're gone for whatever reason, and then they're sick and they're not at church, and it's like you don't really notice the difference, and that's kind of a sad thing. You don't want that. Our group is small enough where it shouldn't be an issue, but when you're not there enough for the priest to notice that you're not there, that's not a good thing. And
right.
if you help out, it's really hard. It makes you more missed when you're not there for sure, and it helps to obviously unify you with everybody else too. So it's yeah, I'm just being there. That's the important thing.
So, oh man, I posted this on Facebook today. Like, so what you're saying is like the same four things, and we didn't talk about prayer or Bible or today, like not
No,
overtly, but the same things that we would likely say are keys to growing spiritually, like gathering and serving.
yeah,
And I'm going to say Bible study and prayer. Like those
I
same
would say
four
too.
things are
I would
just
say the same
on.
thing.
I mean, they just are on repeat, and it's so basic. And if just people would get it, it would
Yeah,
be it would be really boring because we'd have a bunch of really mature, spiritually mature people,
I
and that
can
would
handle.
probably not be what we would want our church filled with.
I don't
Although it
know.
would be nice every
Maybe.
once in a while.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm happy for boring if boring's good. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
It's it's always going to come back to those same things. I mean, you always mention in Acts like what they were doing. Gathering,
Yeah.
praying, and all these things, and it's just the different forms it takes. But it's that the church, as a reality, is the gathering of the Christians together
Mm,
to do the things that Christians do. It's works in that sense of the word. It's a because our contention would be God created Adam to do the work. That
mm,
work
mm, mm,
is a way of
mm,
worship. Worship is work.
mm,
It doesn't make you saved outside of Christ saving you through it, which is how we would approach it. Um,
mm.
so if you're not doing that, you need to find a way in or to look at a way in. And then I think our job is just to encourage it, empower, instruct, make disciples.
Yeah.
Um, what was the word? It was another word. Not empower. It was
Equip,
equip.
equipping,
Thank you.
empowering.
My
Yeah.
brain's not working.
So I think my favorite part of this whole little two pastors talk experiment that we're running here is I hope that people are hearing our heart for them. And I think I've said this before. We've talked about this on previous ones. Like I hope that people are hearing our hearts for them and a desire for them to grow in their relationship with God, despite our hard exterior of hey, this is a voluntary affiliation. Go find another church. Like I want people to hear the heart behind that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It's important.
and that's been one of my favorite things about doing this. So this was two pastors talk. We talked about serving today, and we will close out our season next time by talking about I think just yeah, what is a pastor? what hat is my pastor wearing at different times. I think that'll be a good.
Like that.
I think that'll be a good check on ourselves, like for us to think about what that looks like. Um, and I think that'll be good for our people to hear of, hey, maybe what are some expectations that people have of pastors? Um, and I really do think we'll bring up this concept of favorites again.
Yeah.
I really have liked the way we talked about that. So yeah, this is Two Pastors Talk, episode 9, serving in the church. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You may like, subscribe, unfollow if you so desire. But we'll be back with episode 10 in a couple weeks. So thanks for watching.